Hello and welcome back to the channel. Yesterday we reached 100 subscribers, so thanks so much for joining the channel, and welcome to anyone who would like to hit that subscribe button as well. Very much appreciated. And 19 of you have joined my mini league already. The code is on screen. It's ZBB6SA. It'll also be displayed throughout the video if you'd like to join in advance of this upcoming Dream Team season. So in this video I'm going to give an ultimate guide to the season ahead based on all the pre-season action. Going to give you some expected lineups, injuries, suspension concerns, players to target, and also fixture swings to target for the upcoming Dream Team season, and all the opinions, discussions, concerns, all to go with all of that. So it's going to be very comprehensive video covering all of the Premier League teams apart from the promoted sides, just because I'm a little less familiar with those sides at the moment, and I don't think we're going to be targeting so much the players from those sides straight away at least. So hope you enjoy the video. If you do want to just skip to a certain team, I will put the subsections in the description. So let's get started. Starting with the champions Arsenal of last season. They obviously qualified for the Champions League once again, and they go in as probably favourites for this upcoming season. I watched a Community Shield match and they played very much as a team. They performed really well, 3-0 win over Man City. So the transfers that they've got in, they've obviously made that Hincapié loan move permanent, which he is a great addition to the team, can fill in at left back and also centre back as well. They've brought in Guimaraes to add to their already amazing midfield of Rice, Lewis Skelly, Zubimendi, Merino can also play there. So they're really heavy in all aspects of their team. So they're really building on the squad that won them the title last season. One of my targets for this season is Solis, the left winger. Amazing stats in pre-season, as I've already mentioned numerous times. 1 goal and 6 assists. He is a target man. I've had him in my drafts from the very beginning, saw his potential before his amazing performance in the Community Shield. Wasn't afraid to share his potential with you before that game, but of course his ownership is just going to skyrocket now because everyone has seen him in the flesh, and because Martinelli wasn't even in the squad, I think he's just secured that left wing spot really until they get anyone else through the door. I mean, Eze could also play there, but he doesn't perform as well in that position. He's better as a number 10. And of course, Odegaard thrived in that position the other day, so I think Eze is very much just going to be second choice really in those positions. They've lost Trossard, but they've obviously brought in Solis, who I think is an upgrade. So very solid team that they've built. Lots of depth in each position. Raya, White, Mosquera, Gabriel, Calafiori, they're going to be the ones expected to start the games. Of course, there's always a chance that Hincapié could start a game, but I think probably Calafiori will start that first game against Coventry. We will know from the lineups. But if they want to go a little bit more defensive, they can always start with Hincapié, or he can be brought on at any time. With Calafiori, I've already mentioned his stats last season were not that great in terms of attacking potential. In the 24-25 season, he came up with 3 goals and 2 assists in 29, which actually, because he didn't play as many games, was okay. Then last season, it was just the 1 goal and 3 assists in 36. So I've already mentioned that in a previous video, and of course he looked great in that Community Shield match. He appeared that he was going forward more than ever, really. So there is a chance he's going to improve on these numbers this season, but I'm avoiding not to go there. I am getting a bit distracted with all the noise. You know, there's loads of managers that have just put him in their team now because of that performance, and I can understand, because from the eye test he was just getting so far forward. But we're only just starting this game, and as I've said, we want our players to play, to rack up the points, to start building up our budget. He might not start. That's the reality. Hincapié could start. Then he doesn't get the minutes points, and then he doesn't get the the potential attacking returns, or he comes off before the 60 minutes and he doesn't get the clean sheet points and he's not scored. So really that is my concern early on in this Sundream season, when I want to secure points and budget increases. So I'm personally going to go with Gabriel, just because he's secured in this team. He'll get the clean sheet points and potentially an attacking return as well. He was better than Calafiori for attacking returns last season as well. So I'm trying to not get distracted with the noise. But of course, if you want to go with Calafiori, you should absolutely go there. So they obviously have a great first fixture against Coventry. You will see the lineups. If he started in that game, then why not? You should go there. But for the subsequent game weeks, a bit like other players in this Arsenal team, you risk them not starting because you won't know the lineups before the games. So that's what I mean. He's just a bit of a risk for me going forward. Arsenal have a great few fixtures really to start the season. Most of their better fixtures come within the first 8 game weeks, as you can see here. And of course they'll be in Champions League as well, so they're playing double game weeks most weeks, apart from that game week 5 where everyone has an international break. So great fixtures. So if you have an Arsenal asset that you're sure that they're going to sort of play, then you should absolutely have them for the majority of the start of this season. In pre-season, obviously we mentioned Solis coming up with the goods. Lewis Skelly was also part of the midfield for most of their pre-season games, and he's scored a goal and provided 2 assists in that time as well. Also a great performance in the Community Shield, so I don't see why he's going to be dropped from that position. But still, it's just a bit of a risk, but you will know the lineups. Set piece duty and corners, etc. going forward. I mean, it's very variable really, depending on who's on the pitch. I mean, pretty much guaranteed Rice will be on some set pieces. He was on all of them last season, but with the addition of Solis, who's taken some in pre-season, they could be shared out now. But as for corners and penalties and things, they really are shared with a lot of players, so I wouldn't base your decision on having one of these players in your team based on the fact they're going to take all of these corners and penalties. So there we have Arsenal, looking very bright going into this season. I would predict them to go on and win it again, just because I think their squad is so solid and they just played very, very well together as a unit in that Community Shield, and they just got momentum behind them really. So next we have Aston Villa. They finished in 4th position last season, qualifying them for the Champions League for this season. Unfortunately, they've had a lot of outgoings and injuries, and that does concern me a little bit with Aston Villa for this season. They've lost Tielemans in midfield. He was great as a defensive midfielder. He could also play the number 10. He was on their corners and penalties and things like that. So he's a massive loss. And going to sort of a rival in Manchester United by way of, Premier League and Champions League rival as well, is really a bit of a shame really for Aston Villa. But they've got in to replace João Gomez, who can fill in that similar position. But unfortunately, he's picked up an injury and he's going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. Kamara's only just returned from injury from a long layoff, and Onana was injured in the World Cup. So really, I've mentioned it in a previous video, I'm a bit concerned about their midfield going forward. In the predicted lineup, there's going to be Kamara, and then it's sort of a Barkley or Bogard, which, Barkley's getting on a little bit, and Bogard's young and not the most sort of amazing to the eye, to be quite honest. So McGinn can cover in there as well, but I think he's needed up front due to the squad looking a little bit thin. So I'm just a bit worried about their midfield. They're going to be playing more games this season again, so they're going to get more minutes, so they can't really share them out unless they get sort of more reinforcements in the door. So yeah, I think the squad's looking very thin. Up front as well, I mean, Watkins didn't really play many minutes in the World Cup, and he's not featured in pre-season, so not sure how he is in terms of fitness levels. Abraham started in a recent pre-season but seemed to come off injured or was sort of limping at the end of the game. The new young prospect Maggio did very well in pre-season, but he's now injured. So it literally just leaves Watkins, and we just don't know what his fitness level is like because we haven't seen him in pre-season, and I've not particularly seen any news. So I'm also concerned about their centre-forward position. I think the brightest prospect in this Villa team at the moment is Buendia, who I've spoken about in my Hidden Gems video. I think it's very much going under the radar a little bit. He didn't play all of the games last season, but he did most of them. What I mean is he didn't start all of them, but he often came on. And with Tielemans now going, Buendia is going to be that player on all the set pieces and the penalty duties as well. And is likely going to be in that number 10 position because their new transfer, Manzambi, who would play there, is out injured from an injury sustained in the World Cup, and I can't see any news on the nature really of the injury and how long he's going to be out for. So I think Buendia is definitely a mainstay in that number 10 position and is on all those set pieces and penalties as well. So I think he's really the bright spot. He's also come up with 2 goals and 4 assists in pre-season. So I think Buendia is definitely one to target if you want an Aston Villa asset. But the fixtures ahead, really, I mean, not great first couple of fixtures. The best fixture swing that I could find in the first 10 game weeks is sort of from game week 3, where they do go away to newly promoted Hull and then they have a Champions League game. And then it's Nottingham Forest at home in game week 4, which is okay. So that's really maybe when you should consider having a player like Buendia in your team. And at least the first couple of fixtures, or game weeks rather, we'll be able to see how they're sort of lining up, how they're performing for this new season, given all their outgoings and injuries as well. So, yeah, I do worry a little bit about Aston Villa for this season, personally, but hopefully they'll do okay. Next, I'm going to talk about Bournemouth. So they had a great season last season. Obviously, they did have Iriola in charge at the moment. We're not sure how they're going to perform this season with the new manager. They did finish 6th, and that meant they could qualify for the Europa League this season. In the Sun Dream team, this means more games for those Bournemouth assets. On the whole, their squad has stayed quite similar to last season. They have lost Senesi to Tottenham, but they have brought in a very experienced replacement in Silva, so he's likely going to start alongside Hill, and Diakate will drop out. They've also brought in Rodriguez, who is a forward, to compete with Evan Nielsen, who Evan Nielsen didn't have a great season last season, only 6 goals and 4 assists in 38 appearances, which really was not good for centre forward. However, Evan Nielsen has performed really well in pre-season. He's already racked up half of what he's achieved in the whole of last season already in pre-season, 3 goals and 2 assists. So is that because they've got this Rodriguez in and he's posing a bit of competition for Evan Nielsen now, and now he's up in his game? Maybe. So obviously Krupi is injured, unfortunately. He had a great season last season and was on their penalty duty, so it's likely Kluivert's going to start in the number 10 position and be on penalties. He's taken and scored 2 penalties in pre-season already, so he's already matched his goal returns for the entire of last season. Kluivert didn't have a great season last season, only 2 goals in 21, so he's already matched that in pre-season as well, so he does have that attacking upside in terms of penalties for this season. I did think it was going to be Tavernier, to be honest, but it appears like it's Kluivert. But Tavernier does have the sort of corner duties and maybe on penalties as well if Kluivert's not on the pitch. So in pre-season, Evan Nielsen, Kluivert, Tavernier, they've all come up with the goals and assists. First few game weeks, I would probably avoid the Bournemouth assets and maybe start to consider them from game week 7, because they've got 2 home games against Sunderland and Leeds in the first couple of game weeks, and then they go away to Coventry, newly promoted, and they also have the Europa League games in 2 of those game weeks as well. So they've got a few double game weeks here against easier opponents, and they have an extra game in the Europa League. So that's particularly when I would recommend focusing on the Bournemouth assets. But I think they'll be okay this season. I say the squad is pretty similar, just changing the defence a little bit. So I think they will do really well. So next we have Brentford, who finished in 9th position last season. They only just missed out on Europe, which is a shame for them really. Their squad sort of stayed quite similar. They have brought in another midfielder in Sangare just to improve that midfield perhaps a little bit, and also they've brought in 2 attackers, Jaden Anthony and Callum Wilson, both very experienced in the Premier League, just as backup for Thiago, who is going to obviously be the starting centre forward. So they've strengthened well, and they've had a great pre-season. We've got Utara, Thiago, Schade and Damsgaard all getting in on the goals and assists in pre-season. And I think Brentford scored like 7 goals against Freiburg. So they really are thriving in that attacking department at the moment. And hopefully they will start the season in a similar way, really. So Thiago is the main man, of course. He was averaging about 0.65 goals per appearance on average. He scored something like 25 goals in 40 appearances last season. He's on penalties. He's your main target man. But do you go there yet? I mean, perhaps. Game week 1, home fixture against Tottenham, which I don't think is too bad. They have got an EFL Cup game in that same game week, but I don't think he's going to be involved in that. And then in the second and third game weeks, it's a away fixture to Leeds and then a home fixture against Sunderland. So I do think if you do want to target Thiago, I think now is the time to do it. Because in game week 3 is the start of sort of Champions League as well, Europa League and game week 4, you may want to switch him over to a player that's going to participate in those competitions so that they can sort of potentially play more games and you can get more points. Next is Brighton. So they finished in 8th position last season and they are now going to be qualified for the Europa Conference League this season. So they're going to be playing a few more games this season. They have strengthened in defence. They brought in 2 good centre-backs, Vuskovic and Pascal Struijk from Leeds. This is in addition to Dunk, who they already had, and Boskagli seems to be quite a popular choice in the centre-back position at the moment. So they've got a few players that can play in defence, so we just don't know who's going to be nailed on just yet, to be honest. I think Vuskovic looks quite promising, but I'm not going to have him in my team until I know that he's fairly nailed. They have lost Van Heck to Tottenham, but they've brought in good reinforcements. They've also lost Welbeck to Chelsea, so he's a massive loss given his great returns last season. But today we've learnt they've brought in Promise David on loan to be the main centre forward, I would think, because I don't think Rutter has been that great in that position. Yes, he did score 2 goals and provide 1 assist in pre-season, but on the whole last season his data was really poor. And also this Kostoulas, who seems to have been at Brighton for a little while, just hasn't seemed to have nailed that centre forward spot. So they've got this David through the door now. Could he take penalties over Gross? Quite possibly. I still think Gross would be a good asset to have for corners and set pieces and things like that. But he is getting on as well a little bit, so the game time may be a little bit less for him this season, Gross. Having said that, they do seem to have a bit of an injury hit team at the moment, and a few players going out. There's talk of Baleba. I mean, there's been talk for ages of Baleba going to Man United, and nothing's really materialised. This has come to surface once again today, possibly Baleba going out. But really, that only leaves limited options in midfield. You know, Gross and Ayari. I think Ayari's definitely a guaranteed starter for this season, and he does quite well in the goals front, considering his position. But then up front, I mean, Matoma is injured, and Minte went off with an injury in pre-season. That's meant that basically Gomez has come in on the right-hand side to replace Minter in pre-season game, but he then went off injured, and he was actually in my Hidden Gems video. I thought he was going to be secure for this upcoming season given Minter's injury, but we don't know the extent of Gomez's injury now, so yeah, it really is up in the air. On the left where Matoma was, it's been De Kuyper, who's usually a left back, who's been filling in that position. But we know how attacking De Kuyper is, and even in the World Cup, and he's so attacking and he gets shots away on goal. So he could be very much an option going forward because of his attacking threat as well. So fixtures wise, not great to start the season. Perhaps you can consider Brighton assets from game week 3, where they have Leeds at home and then they go to Coventry away in game week 4. But game week 3 and 4 are both sort of Europa League and Champions League matches, and of course Brighton are not playing a part in those competitions, so you may wish to have other players that potentially are going to be playing twice in these game weeks. Next is Chelsea. So very poor season last season, finishing 10th. It's meant they're not in Europe this season, which is not great for the club, but also not great in terms of having their assets for Dream Team this season, because they're kind of going to be playing less games. They've obviously been very active in the transfer window. They often are. Quite a few outgoings, but also incomings as well. They've lost Cucurella this season, so he was quite an okay asset for Dream Team last season, but he's no longer at the club, and they've brought in Rodgers for that whopping £138 million deal, so I think it's safe to say Rodgers is a guaranteed starter in this team. Along with Palmer, it's likely those two are going to play behind João Pedro, so I think those three are definitely secure in this team and are very good attacking options. The first few game weeks are good. They go away to Fulham, they then have a home game against Luton in the same game week, and then in game week 2 they have the home game, the first one of the season at home in the Premier League against Brighton. So good first couple of fixtures, and then after that, I mean, they do have Hull in game week 4, but that's just the one fixture, and that same game week Europa League is on as well, so you may wish to have players that played twice in that game week instead of Chelsea assets. But having said that, we know that players like Rodgers and Palmer and Pedro could absolutely haul in a single game week against newly promoted Hull at home. So I think it's still fair to consider having Chelsea assets for that game week 4 fixture against Hull. Pre-season, Pedro was amazing. 7 goals and 2 assists in pre-season. He's in my team to start the season. I think he'll have a great season. But yeah, Chelsea assets are great, but you just need to be aware they're not in Europe, so they're not going to play as many games this season. So quite possibly they're just not going to score as many points as they did last season. Next we have Palace. So they didn't have a great season last season, finishing 15th in the Premier League, but they did win the Europa Conference League last season, so that's meant they've qualified this season for the Europa League. So they've reinforced their defence this season, as they did lose Guehi last season and Lacroix has gone this season to Chelsea. So they've brought in 2 very versatile defenders in Mingueza and Tomiyasu, who both of them can play in varying positions across the back line, whether that's centre-backs or as wing-backs. Mingueza started as the right wing-back in the last pre-season game, and Munoz, he favoured over Munoz, and there's talk that Munoz may be not a Palace player at the end of the transfer window, which is a little bit surprising. But I think Mingueza is definitely a player that I'm looking to target when the fixtures get a bit better, which I'll talk about shortly. In attack, they've let Johnson go out to Everton in return to McNeil, who's come from Everton, so they've had a bit of a swap there. And yeah, so that's their transfer activity. The first few fixtures, probably not one to target, just because it's an away game to start the season at Everton, and then in game week 2 they have the home game against City. I'm particularly going to target Palace assets from game week 3, because I think they've got 3 game weeks here, actually 4 game weeks, between game week 3 and game week 6, where they have great fixtures, as well as Europa League games. So they will have double game weeks as well. So I'm particularly looking at Sarr, just because he's nailed in this team, and he's likely going to be on penalties. It's been Larson that started as the number 9 in the last 2 friendlies, and in the most recent friendly, Mateta didn't come on the pitch at all to replace Larson, so perhaps that was a bit telling maybe. So I think Sarr will be on penalties as well, and his record last season was incredible, almost a goal every 2 games as well. So I'm particularly going to focus on perhaps getting Sarr and Mingueza at game week 3 for the great fixture run of Fulham away, and then Ipswich at home, European game, Leeds away, Nottingham Forest at home. Really great fixtures to come. New manager this season. It looks like they're still going to be playing in this sort of back 5 with wing back positions, so it's a formation they're familiar with from last season, and I think they will do okay this season. So next up is Everton. They finished 13th last season. They do sort of finish sort of mid-table quite a lot of these seasons, to be quite honest. They've reinforced their midfield with a few signings because they've lost Idrissa Gueye, and they've sent McNeil to Palace, and then they've brought in Johnson from Palace. So they've done a bit of a swapsy there. Personally, I'm not focusing on these assets at all. I don't think the fixtures to start with are great, apart from possibly the first one, Crystal Palace at home. Potentially, if you really wanted to have Everton asset, is to go from game week 5, Ipswich at home, and then in game week 6 they go away to Hull. But in that game week 6, Europa League and Champions League is up and running, so you may want assets from teams playing in those competitions as well. So for me, these assets are just an avoid at the moment, to be honest. There's not really too much to say, really, in my opinion. Next we have Fulham. So they had a decent season last season, finishing 11th. But I'm very worried about them in this season, because they've lost the manager, and they've also lost a lot of key players. So up front, Jimenez is gone, back to Wolves. They've lost Harry Wilson on the wing, who was great for goals and assists last season. They've lost Lukic to Ipswich. He was quite a mainstay in that midfield. And they've lost Diop, who's a very experienced centre-back, as well, I think he's gone to Ipswich as well. So they've lost big hitters here, and all they've really brought in is 2 players from sort of Real Madrid academy, Garcia up front and Palacios midfielder. So yeah, I'm a bit worried, to be honest, about them in this season. I think the outgoings will mean that Iwobi plays a bit deeper in midfield, but he will be on corners and set pieces. It's thought that the new signing Garcia will be on penalty duties, but for me, these guys are just an avoid. Obviously, the first few fixtures are not great. Chelsea at home, and then Sunderland away. Potentially, you can consider them from game week 6, but they only have single game weeks because, of course, they're not in Europe. So, like I said about Everton, you may just want to have players that are playing in more than one competition in your team, rather than Fulham and Everton assets. So, they do have Ipswich away, Hull at home and Coventry away, but they only have those games and not on to Leeds. So I think they've strengthened big time this season. They finished 14th last season, but I think they're going to have a better season this season. They've brought in Harry Wilson from Fulham, who is a goal and an assist threat, and they've strengthened in their defence, bringing in Mihajlovic, who is also a bit of a goal threat, 2 goals last season, but also he's scored an overhead kick in pre-season as well. And they've brought in James Trafford to be the number 1 goalkeeper. So I think they've got a good chance of keeping more clean sheets and being more defensively solid this season. So in terms of set pieces and things, it used to be Stack in the midfield, but possibly Wilson will share some now. We know how capable he is of providing a good free kick and crosses into the box. And penalties will remain with Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin had a great pre-season, 3 goals and 2 assists. He's their main number 9, and he's currently in my draft. We'll wait to see if he is still there by tomorrow. And then Aronson's had a good pre-season as well, 2 goals and 2 assists. So, yeah, I like the look of Leeds, but like Everton and Fulham, they're not in Europe. So when they do have okay fixtures to start the season, the first 5 game weeks are good for them. Forest away, Brentford at home, Brighton away, and then they have 2 home fixtures against Newcastle and Crystal Palace. But just be aware they're not in Europe, so you may not have their assets for as long as others. Next is Liverpool. Not a great season last season. They've only just got into the Champions League, really. They did finish 5th, and they've lost quite a few big players, really. I mean, Salah's gone, and also Konate and Robertson in defence, they've now gone. Replacements have been a bit thin on the ground, really. I mean, they brought in Jake to replace Konate, who's been injured a little bit in pre-season, but he could start the season. And then Araujo on loan as well, just as reinforcement in that centre-back position. The right-back position, I mean, Frimpong's been in and out of pre-season due to injury, and that's quite a common occurrence, really, injuries to Frimpong. They've got Tsimikas on the other side, who could fill in in Frimpong's position potentially, but also Szoboszlai. So I just think they're a little bit thin, particularly in defence. And even up front, I thought last season they were quite thin, and they haven't really brought in any reinforcements there, really. They've brought in this Victor Munoz, who's sort of a left winger, but he will be competing with Gakpo. But there's been all that talk about Gakpo going to Tottenham, which still might happen, which might secure Munoz in that position. But then there's one less option, as a replacement, really. I mean, who else have they got up front that they could play? We've got Engamo in this expected lineup. Who else could there be? I mean, Harvey Elliott's back from Aston Villa, but I honestly can't really think of anyone else unless they bring in Szoboszlai up front and then bring on McAllister in midfield, but then you're relying on a fully fit defence as well. So I just think they just look really thin on the ground for this season. They're playing Champions League as well, so it's a lot more games and things. So yeah, I'm just a little bit worried about them, to be honest. They have decent fixtures to start the season, to be honest. Newcastle away, it's not too bad. Game week 2, Forest at home, and then game week 3 is particularly where I'm going to focus on perhaps getting an asset in like Bert's, because they have Ipswich away and then they play a Champions League game, and then after that it's Fulham at home in the following game week. So that's personally where I'm going to consider having a Liverpool asset. It's not going to be in defence though. Van Dijk is an option if you do want a Liverpool defence, because if they concede, at least he has that potential attacking upside. Pre-season, Szoboszlai's got in on the goals again, 2 goals, 1 assist. He hasn't sort of been in a stable sort of position, so once again, been in multiple different positions and coming up with the goods. And then Wirtz, who's mainly played in that number 10 position, has scored 2 goals. So a bit of talk about Wirtz's minutes. Is he going to play the full 90? If he comes off, is Szoboszlai actually going to end up being in that number 10 position? Quite possibly. It's quite difficult to decide between the two, to be honest. I mean, Szoboszlai was the second highest scoring player in Dream Team last season, in on the goals, in on the assists, but also bonus points. He's on the free kicks. He possibly could be on penalties. So that sways perhaps some decisions in his favour. But I think Wirtz is going to be more stable in the side now if he just stays in that number 10 position. So he can start building up a little bit more consistency. So that's where Wirtz could be good as well. But quite difficult to decide between them, to be quite honest. Szoboszlai is, of course, been priced at that premium price this season. 6 million, that's 1 million more than Wirtz. Next, Manchester City. They missed out on the title last season, finishing second. Of course, they're still in the Champions League for this season. Lots of changes, really. Pep's gone now, so Maresca's now the manager, but also they've lost quite a few key players. Quite a lot of defenders have gone, Akanji, Ake, Stones, and also Rodri is now gone, so a massive loss in that holding midfield position. Despite all the defensive outgoings, they appear to still have lots of defensive options. Kusanov, Diaz, Vardiol, O'Reilly started the Community Shield, but that meant that Gehi and Ait-Nouri was on the bench. So personally, I wouldn't go with any Man City defensive options. One, because we don't know who's going to be secure in that line apart from Diaz, but he doesn't offer any attacking threat. But secondly, they've obviously just conceded 3. It was to Arsenal though, so maybe we should not take that too seriously. But for those reasons, I wouldn't consider any Manchester City defenders at the moment. They have brought in Anderson into the midfield to replace Rodri, but he appeared to play a little bit more forward in that Community Shield game, and it was Kovacic that sort of stayed in that Rodri position. But I don't think Kovacic's going to play as many, all the games this season, because he is sort of a bit older now. He will share minutes with Nico Gonzalez, is my prediction. Anderson's going to start and play every game. He's potentially going to be on set pieces. We saw that he took half the corners with Foden as well, so he could be in on the assists. He's not going to get as many sort of tackle points and things like that, because Manchester City are going to have more of the ball than Anderson did have at Forest. So, yeah. And first 3 fixtures are great. Bournemouth at home, and they go away to Crystal Palace, and then it's Coventry at home, game week 3, as well as a Champions League fixture. So definitely fixtures to target. We have learned this morning that Doku has sustained an injury. He came off at half-time in the Community Shield with ice on his calf, and apparently he is out of game week 1. So does this reduce the appeal of Haaland, because he's not going to get those sort of crosses in from Doku? Quite possibly. Who else do they have in that position to replace Doku? Grealish, if he's not loaned out anywhere else, but he looked a bit rusty and didn't look too great. And then it's Savinho, who's also been linked with a move away. Semenyo could play on that side. He's played on that left side in pre-season. And then someone else could come in on the right, like a Foden or Cherky, but that's not their main positions either. So, yeah, I'm a little bit worried, I think, about the service into Haaland for the start of the season, really. We did see in the Community Shield, Anderson was getting a few crosses into the box, so I think that could be a route to Haaland scoring a bit more this season, more sort of overhead passes into Haaland and headers on goal rather than to foot. Semenyo, he was brilliant last season. He was almost averaging a goal every 2 games or so, but he's actually come up with the assists really in pre-season. 5 assists and no goals. And these 5 assists he scored in pre-season is only 1 less than he acquired for the whole of last season. So I think that's telling in the way that I think Maresca's going to change the way they play a little bit. I did see in the Community Shield, Semenyo appeared quite wide on the touchline. So perhaps with Semenyo this season, we're going to get less of the goals and more of the assists. I still think he'll rack up the points though, and he's still a great option. On to Manchester United. Good season last season. They finished 3rd and they've qualified for the Champions League again this season, which is great for their club. They've lost Casemiro. I think his time was up really. He's getting a bit older. He was not so strong in that midfield really, but they've brought in 2 great defensive reinforcements in Santos and Tielemans. So a great couple of reinforcements that should hopefully ensure their defence is a little bit more solid this season, although we have just seen that they conceded 4 to AC Milan in pre-season, so we'll see what happens there. Mbeumo was the star of pre-season, coming up with 3 goals and 1 assist. He mainly played in the up-front number 9 position because Sesko was injured, but we have seen that Sesko is back in training, so that's just something to be aware of. Of course, Mbeumo can play on the right wing as well, and last season in that position he was sort of averaging a goal every 3 games, so he's still got the capability of returning And I do predict that Mbeumo will still start in that number 9 position in their first game away at Hull. So he's in my team really for that reason, that he's going to be the number 9 and he's had a great pre-season. Cunha's back as well, but I do worry he could not start. Dorgu started a lot on the left wing, so he is competing with him, and also Rashford is back as well. Cunha could play a number 10, but there's just no assurity of the starts, to be quite honest. So that's why I'm going with Mbeumo. I know he was benched for one of the friendlies, but a lot of people were worried about that. But I think it was just given a rest, in my opinion. He's played all of the pre-season games, and like Maguire was benched for one game, and it was said that that was just a rest as well. So I really don't think he's just going to be dropped like that, given his amazing performances in pre-season. So Man United have possibly the best fixture run to start the season, away to newly promoted Hull and at home to newly promoted Ipswich in game week 2. Game week 3 sees them go away to Everton, and also they're back in the Champions League. So they have a double game week in game week 3. So great fixtures to start the season. I would focus on having an attacker and a defender from Manchester United to start the season. Next we have Newcastle. So not the best season last season. They finished in 12th position. They were in the Champions League as well. So I think that didn't perhaps help. And now, unfortunately, they've lost Eddie Howe, and they've lost many of their great players from last season. Lots of good players have left, and they don't seem to have brought in players of the same calibre into the club. A lot of young players they brought in as replacements. Bamba in that midfield, and Stur. Toure as sort of a left winger to compete with Barnes, who's just signed a new contract. So, I mean, even Barnes isn't secure now, because apparently Toure's played quite well in pre-season. They've brought in Dejic. He's a Bosnia international that can play sort of right back, I believe, because Trippier's gone as well. So lots of changes, and apparently they've not been great in pre-season. I'm particularly worried about their midfield, just because of the players that they've brought in are quite young and inexperienced. They do have good fixtures from game week 4, but you know, they've got Leeds away, Hull at home, and then Coventry away. But of course they're not in Europe, so like I've already spoken about with other teams, we may not have these Newcastle guys in our teams because they only play one game per game week. Up front position, still a bit up in the air. You know, Asula could play up front, Voltemade and Visser behind, or it could be Visser up front, Voltemade behind, or yeah, I think that's most likely the outcome. I don't think Voltemade is going to be sort of the number 9 this season, so that's just something to be aware of. I wouldn't personally have any of Newcastle assets at all, really. I was tempted by Barnes, but I've heard Toure's played well and could quite possibly start over Barnes, so I wouldn't recommend having him in your team either at the moment. So there's just no assurity with the minutes of these guys. Potentially you could have Malik Chow in for those game week 4 to 6 fixtures, because he's got that aerial threat as well, and he's sort of guaranteed to play. So, and also Lewis Hall, just for the bonus point potential. If they don't keep the clean sheets, he's sort of guaranteed, 5 points or so just from appearances and bonus points. But apart from that, I wouldn't consider any of these assets. So Nottingham Forest, not the best season last season, finished 16th. They've got a new manager in Glasner from Crystal Palace, so I think they'll be much better this season. And it seems like they've really reinforced their defence this season. They brought in Diamonde, he's an Ivory Coast international, very experienced, into that back three along with Murillo and Milenkovic, because they're likely going to play with wing backs this season. Aina and Williams are going to be much further forward, so they can then drop back if needed and form a back five. So I think they're going to be more defensively solid this season. We saw how solid Glasner was with Crystal Palace in terms of good defensive numbers last season. So I think, Forest will definitely improve in that department this season. They've brought in Schlager as a replacement for Anderson, who's gone to Man City. They have lost Awani to Coventry, because I think it's likely Jesus is going to be starting number 9, 4 goals in pre-season. He's going to be on their penalties as well. He could play alongside Chris Wood, but I just think Jesus is just going to be the main man up front now. And I think in this formation, it does mean that players like Gibbs-White are going to be even more forward than they were last season, potentially in a number 10 position along with Ndoye behind Jesus. So I think he's a very appealing asset. But my concern is perhaps just the fixtures. Yes, they have a great first fixture at home to Leeds, a fantastic fixture that any of these assets could do really well in. And then, of course, the same again in the EFL Cup game. But after that, it's Liverpool away and Tottenham at home. So my personal opinion is that while I think these assets are great, like Gibbs-White, I'm not going to have them in my team to start the season just because of those game week 2 and game week 3 fixtures. They could potentially not do too well in them, and there's the potential they could drop budget as well. I haven't put any graphic of the next fixture swing because I don't feel like they have any good fixture swings in the next 10 game weeks. So I think after the game week 10, potentially they're going to have a period where they're going to have some great fixtures, and that's when I would particularly be interested in one of those assets, but not for me for now. But if you had to choose one, I mean, I can't pick one. It's Gibbs-White and Jesus, really, but Gibbs-White for the overall all-rounder, assists, potential goal threat and bonus points. And of course, in defence, it would be Williams over Aina. Williams has been priced 1.5 million more than Aina, but I think for good reason. His bonus points were off the scale last season, offers way more attacking potential than Aina, but potentially Aina could improve this season because he's going to be more further forward than he was last season. But personally, I wouldn't go for Aina. I would find the extra money for Williams. Sunderland finished 7th last season. Decent season. They were doing really well at the beginning. They sort of tailed off towards the end, but they did secure that Europa League for this season. My concern with their season ahead is that given they are in Europe this season, they just don't seem to have been very active in the transfer window, and they also have a few injuries. So they've only brought in Meunier in defence, who is a very experienced Belgium international, but he is a defender. And then they've also let Mayenda go, one of their attackers, so that just leaves Bobby and Isidore. But apart from that, they just haven't been very active, and I just worry that their squad is looking a little bit thin given the extra games that they have to play this season. In pre-season, it's been Lefay that's come up with 3 goals, and then also Hume has been operating more as a right winger as opposed to his usual right back position, and he's come up with 2 goals and 1 assist. He was in my Hidden Gems video, but because Sunderland have had a few injuries in defence, there is that potential he could just drop back still in that right back position, so then his attacking threat just decreases a little bit, so I'd probably maybe avoid him now. If you go for one player, it's definitely going to be Lefay. He's going to be on a good share of set pieces, corners and penalties. Personally, it's not one I'm going to go for. He only averaged about 0.15 goals and 0.15 assists per game on average. So yeah, he's not one for me personally, but he's a good enabler. Sunderland start the season with some good fixtures. They go away to Ipswich in game week 1, and then game week 2 they have a home game against Fulham. So I think it's absolutely okay to have one of their assets in your team for the first couple of game weeks, and then maybe from game week 8 they have that home fixture against Leeds, and then in game week 9 they go away to Cov, newly promoted, and they have a Europa League game. So perhaps that's another fixture swing where you'd like to target having one of these players in your team. And the last team I'm going to talk about is Tottenham. So very, very poor season last season, only just stayed up. They finished 17th, which is crazy for a team of their calibre and, you know, an amazing stadium that they have. But they're still in the Premier League, which is great for the club. So they've certainly strengthened. They may have lost a few key players. I mean, Paulinho was only on loan, and Romero wasn't really that great. It's not a big loss. Spence has gone, which I do think is a bit of a loss, to be honest, because I think he was a good defender. So they've lost a few in defence, but they have brought in Senesi and Van Heck, who can play centre backs. You know what? It's only going to be one of those guys that's going to play alongside Van der Ven, but I think Van der Ven's possibly injured a bit at the moment as well. So it could be these guys that start in centre back positions. And on the left back position, I think it will be Robertson, because Udogie is injured. Robertson's apparently played quite well in pre-season. He's obviously very experienced. And then on the other side, Porro is probably not up to match fitness after his win with Spain. So it's likely going to be Archie Gray on that right back position, which does worry me perhaps a little bit. Yes, he is young and has full of energy, but I wouldn't say that's his best position. And then likewise on the left side with Robertson, yes, he's very experienced, but he is getting a bit older now. So Tottenham go to Brentford for their first game week, and I am focusing on having Utara in my team. I think any of the Brentford assets against this Tottenham sort of defence could be an option, particularly targeting Archie Gray and Robertson in those fullback positions. I think they could be a target. So first two fixtures are not the greatest for Tottenham. Brentford away, then they have Newcastle at home, which is okay, and then it's Forest away. What I'm a bit worried about with Tottenham is that they don't seem to have a lot in attack. You know, they've improved their defence and midfield. You know, Tonali and Fernandes in midfield, a fantastic partnership, and they've spent 200 million on these two guys. So I'm happier with their defence for this season. But up front, they've had a few injuries. It seems that Gallagher's likely going to start in the number 10, and it will be more Antel on the wings unless they get Gakpo and Savinho through the door, which I definitely think they need one of those two guys. And then it's Richarlison who up front, who scored 12 goals in 43 appearances last season. But he's also a bit of an injury risk as well. So I'm a little bit worried about where their goals are going to come from this season, in my opinion. Maybe you wish to focus on their fixture swing from game week 4. They have Everton at home, and then they have Aston Villa at home in the following game week. So 2 game weeks consecutively where they have games at home, but Tottenham are not in Europe, so they have single game weeks essentially. So they're not going to have that double game week in game week 4, like those teams that are in Europe, for example. So yeah. Not personally convinced I will go with their assets really for a little while. Set piece wise, I mean, Porro was on a lot of them last season, but we know Tonali is more than capable of stepping up with those. He was involved in most of them for Newcastle last year, but also Robertson's been taking them. You know, he took them a lot for Liverpool, so I think Robertson could be ahead of Tonali in the pecking order. But let me know in the comments below if you think otherwise. But of course, yeah, Robertson's definitely going to be on them, I think, in my opinion, for the first few games. So there we have it. My ultimate comprehensive guide to all of these Premier League teams, apart from those newly promoted, unfortunately. Hopefully all this information was useful for you to help shape your first drafts for this upcoming Dream Team season. If you did enjoy the video, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, plenty more content to come. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.